Alright, here we go again. It is a big pile of comics I got myself. There is a theme linking all these, and you would have to be a blind man to not spot it. That is an int because they are Daredevil comics and he is blind. We're starting today off with Daredevil 353. The return of the murderous, and dare I say, cottagen, Mr. Hines. This is another run that fits into my theoretical, vague age of Marvel Comics. We have Daredevil from 96 through to early 98. This is after the Spectator bubble burst, but before the wank stains took over. The comics kept coming out, and not many people were reading them, and even fewer remember them. I did review an issue, the issue just before this, a fill-in issue, about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And here's the next issue, 354, guest starring Spider-Man, but it is the Ben Reilly Spider-Man. In my last year of university, I powered through scans of all of the first Daredevil series, all 380 issues, and it was one of the worst comic book experiences of my life, honestly. But for most of the 90s, the book was near an unreadable status. Then, in 1996, this run came along. Callum Cazzazel writing, the writer of Adventures of Superman, 90s Superboy, Captain America, Patriot Man, also a famous inker. But this run seemed to get it. It got what the problem with Daredevil had become. Writers were constantly trying to top Hank Miller. They were trying to go further than Hank Miller. And so Daredevil had just become blind man misery theatre. I came up with that 5 minutes ago. I'm proud of it. The superheroics of Daredevil are being replaced with crushing defeat. On the topic of crushing defeat, there's a price tag on this cover and I don't think it's coming off. Now, a lot of runs, or a lot of writers rather, they would do the fairly shite dial back the clock thing to when they preferred Daredevil, how they want Daredevil to be. And it'll be the early 70s, I bet. But in this case, it didn't feel like a reset. It wasn't walking back or undoing anything. It was just letting Daredevil not be overwhelmed with nihilism or his life being consistently shit-flavoured. One thing you'll have seen across these covers, we've just had 355, 356, and then this is 357. We have had the return to more traditional villains or supervillains. That would be a big part of Daredevil's prior downfall. He would end up relying on Kingpin Man or Bullseye Man, and then in lieu of them, a writer would have to try and make up a new villain or a new group that was meant to be as good as them, and often wasn't. 358, a Steve Epstein cover, and Mysterium from Spider-Man. And this one is notable for a reason, and that reason allows me to mention what happens after this run. Daredevil was relaunched in 1998. That is where the vague age of Daredevil officially ends. It was a big relaunch with screenwriting fraud Kevin Smith. And this one random issue here is referenced in Kevin Smith's run. And I should also say that this issue is better than all 7 of Kevin Smith's. I don't think we're going to get a cover that gives me a chance to talk about the one aspect that I felt really helped things out. One of the big shake-ups that this run reflected was Froggy had finally found out that his best friend was Daredevil. And I think for the first issue or two he's annoyed, but it works out, and it was satisfying, and it felt like something actually important and meaningful was happening with the central character's personal life. And it wasn't pointlessly assassinating someone close to him. Don't worry, Kevin Smith goes back to doing that. God, yeah, we do have some very dependable villains popping in here. This is issue 360, and we have Crusher. We've had Mr. Hind, Fireman Sam, the Enforcers, Mysterium. All of them feel like villains that Daredevil would go, or in Mr. Hind and the Enforcers' case, had gone up against pre-Hank Miller. And there was an nonsense issue with Fireman Sam and Freedom Fries. And then Great Gargoyle is in this one, and so is Scarlett Johansson. And looking at the covers now, maybe I am getting a slight whiff of let's go back to the early 70s. But Callum Cazale is far better and far subtler about that than your Kurt Busies or your Martin Quaids. Spoke too soon, this one would have been a good issue to talk about the Froggy thing. We also have a new setup where Froggy's mum is their boss. That's her with the grey streak. We've got Deborah Ann Wall back as the main love interest. I'll have to reread these. I've gotten a real pang of worry that maybe these are bad, and I was simply too unfamiliar with comics at the age of 21 or 22 to notice what was going on here. Some issues, like this one, issue 363, and just some of them, not all of them thankfully, some have surprise guest art by returning Daredevil veteran John Coleman. And it would be a mix of age and the inking and colouring techniques of the time. It doesn't look good. The art is inconsistent for most this run, but towards the end we get really good Aero Oliver Ritchie artwork, Aero Oliver Ritchie pencils. That's good. But honestly, that price tag is still on my mind. At some point, our writer switches from Callum Cazale to Joe Casey. And back when I read these, I didn't notice a change. I was still not always looking or paying attention to the credits. But I think a good remark upon a writer is when someone doesn't notice something has changed. And the thing is, I don't like Joe Casey. I much prefer Joe Kelly. But this Joe Casey guy, he currently writes Amazing Spider-Man. He has been one of those shitheads who have been circling Spider-Man for 20 years. Not a fan of Joe Casey. I prefer that Joe Kelly guy that did Cable Man and Wildcats 3.0. I'm guessing based on the cover, feeling like it, this is our first Joe Casey issue. I fucking nailed it. And you're all just going to think that I checked beforehand, but I didn't. It just fucking screams, this is a new writer. This cover, it feels like the cover you have for a new writer's first issue on the series. And then the next one starts crediting the creators on the cover, and needn't have bothered with my guessing. What excites me more is our new guide to the Marvel Universe, the fold-out recap pages. These are good to show in these videos because they expose it a lot more than I could with my words. There's also an interesting thing, a setup, with Froggy dating Larry Oswald's ex-wife. And so we bring in stuff from Spider-Man like Mortarman, 367, Potterman appearance. I don't remember much of the intricacies. It was so long ago that I read them. It takes me back, it does. The days of, let's see, I'd been working on my audio play about sandwiches and doing whatever it was I did for the live studio module. I would have also been, oh god, this will have been around the time of the Christian rock concert. Need to tell that story in a covers video. I would always put myself forward for extracurricular stuff, and I still have that DVD somewhere. I should find it and upload it and record an exclusive behind the scenes commentary for you all. Smegma Red from Excellent Men is in 368, and Scarlett Johansson too. There's our recap pages. And you thought the Cold War was over? Think again. Some of the Soviet super soldier boys are in this. 370. We're nearing the end now, but something just dawned on me. Kurt Busey ignores this. 5th character down, that is Proletarian. He is in this story. He must have came back to life here. He died in Khazar during Starburst. And Kurt Busey makes a big deal about undoing that in Avengers a few years after this, but obviously flagrantly ignores this issue, this story. He is such a continuity buff. The Fallout. Aero Oliver Ritchie artwork now. I love his art. Don't always like his styles, but he's only doing pencils in these. As you can see, Larry Oswald's ex-wife, who I still haven't come up with a name for, is on most of these cast lists. They dropped that. Pretty much anything from this run is dropped. With the relaunch, we just gone back to Blind Man Misery Theatre, but now it's decompressed. February 1998 is pretty late for a gratuitous Ghost Driver guest appearance. His series was about to be suddenly cancelled without its final issue printed. We are in 98 now though, so you know we're inching nearer to the close. Rather than the same two bad guys again and again, this run tried to re-establish Fearmaster as one of Daredevil's main enemies. Fearmaster would definitely be the arch-enemy for this period. This is cruel, and I fall for it every time. The recap was shrunken down and relegated to the reverse of the advert. 374 is our penultimate chapter before 375. Special double-sized issue. This actually isn't the end of the series, it's the end of the run, but there are 5 more issues after this. A bad 4-part fill-in that you don't want to read, and then a really weak final issue. This is where I am stopping. 375. There's a few more though, like the -1 issue. This fits in there somewhere. and the 1997 annual, which pairs Daredevil with Dead Pills. There's also a few Dead Pills issues with Thyroid Mary. I considered getting them for this, but the thing is, I really cannot put up with Dead Pills much. And I also have a related book that ran roughly the same time, Electro, starring Daredevil's ninja ex-girlfriend. This was her first ever ongoing series, and it is by Spike Milligan and Mike Diddy Dardo Jerk. This I have read too. I read this later on, I think like 9 years ago maybe. It's alright, good art. I think it'll work well as a complementary series to that Daredevil run. Of course, we have art by a jerk, and the art will divide people down to the levels of cheesecake that we get. But as far as this character is concerned, a character that I think should never have an ongoing, it's alright. It does just enough to justify it or her as a more heroic type of figure. Maybe that is going against the core of the character, but if they're going to do an Electro series, I think it approaches her from a standpoint where it makes sense. You can't really do a book where she is a remorseless assassin. Well, you can, but I probably wouldn't read it. And this runs for a decent stretch. Issue 7 here, number 8. And I was waiting for this. Issue 9 gives us the gift of your new guide to the Marvel Universe. I wonder if Daredevil is going to be mentioned on all of them. That would be pretty funny. He is in some issues soon, but the idea he is always listed is funny. Fucking Wolfman. This wasn't too long after they tried to make Wolfman and Electro a thing. They had Electro training the de-evolved feral Wolfman. So this is kind of going back to that recent bit of continuity. Yeah, Daredevil is there, and Wolfman is not. It doesn't even mention a history with Wolfman here. If you do an Electro miniseries, it is inevitable that Daredevil will show up. To their credit, it took 11 issues, and now him being there is less of a surprise. Issue 12. What I remember about this story is that it really pisses all over Daredevil's character. At the time in his series, he is with Deborah Ann Woll, the lovely Deborah Ann Woll. But over here in Electro, he outright has an affair with Electro, and he plans to run away with her. That's bad writing of any character, but it is really bad when the writer knows that the character has his own title, where he would definitely have his own relationships and stuff going on. I am on guard. I think we're ending this run before we get to that point, but I am prepared in case I unfold, and it's an advert. This is our final issue for Spike Milligan. Like on Daredevil, the series continues on after this. Barry Amner takes over, but I remember I gave up reading it like an issue and a half into his run. The series ends at issue 20, but our run is ending here at 13 with Spike Milligan leaving. And so, we don't have to face that nasty advert again. Just like Daredevil, we have a -1 issue for Electro, but no annuals. This is it for Electro, but we do have another ex-girlfriend to focus on. It doesn't exactly fit in. This was a year later. the Scarlett Johansson miniseries from 1999. This is after Kevin Smith had relaunched Daredevil. It's probably by the point that Kevin Smith had left Daredevil. I am attaching this here because it might be able to work in conjunction with those two runs. I have read this. I read this so long ago. I don't remember a single thing about it. Not even a plot beat. Nothing. The only thing I know for certain is what this variant cover to issue 1 shows. We have a new character, Florence Pugh. This miniseries introduces her. And we have wraparound covers on both versions of issue 1. This is basically, oh hello, there's another Scarlett Johansson out there, and it is Florence Pugh. I think there is a sequel series to this, maybe. I really don't remember. She is in Thunderbars, both of them are technically, ScarJo and Flo Pugh. Florence Pugh is an ugly name, and also an ugly person. God, I dislike Florence Pugh. This could be a long bit. Have you seen, I saw a clip of her in one of them Marvel movies. She was in a lift with Girl Hawkeye, and then at the end she runs after Girl Hawkeye. And when she runs, it looks like a kid playing tag. She looks like a little kid in the playground. It is appalling. That casting, it's appalling. Not even basing it on her not being attractive and the character blatantly being attractive. The real issue is that Florence Pugh is incapable of believable action, and they still cast her as one of the characters where the physical demands are essential. You can cast Florence Pugh as, like, Rouge or Storm. Oh god, that would be good. That would piss everyone off. You can cast her as, like, a superhero who has to fly or whatever. But they cast her as, like, one of those characters where she is physically meant to be almost perfect. And she's, like, short and podgy. Issue 3, the last one. I wonder how much of that I will cut out. I ranted for about 17 minutes about how unappealing Florence Pugh is. And the thing is, she's not even a good actress. Everything wrong with her could be offset if she was an amazing actress. And she's not. She has one face, and that is her range. The one face. I forgot to mention the seeing eye dog. Daredevil. He gets a seeing eye dog. I've already made the thumbnail for this. It has a dog on it. I forgot to bring it up though. I had a whole bit as well about how in the 90s they gave Captain America armour, and they made Iron Man a teenager, and they did all these attempts to make things cool. And then for Daredevil, they gave him a seeing eye dog. The dog crosses over into Dead Pills. Froggy loses the dog and it ends up appearing in Dead Pills. Need to fit all the dog stuff in here so I can use that thumbnail. I suppose Florence Pugh, she's a total dog. We can pretend that it's her in the thumbnail. 7 thumbs up